Welcome, everybody, to our Hour Together Clinical Supervision Made Easy, Relational Supervision in a Changing World. And with Els van Ooijen. And Els, a warm welcome back to Online Events for
Thank
this
you.
dialogue. It's
Thanks
great
for
to have
coming.
you. Yeah. And you're coming back to talk to us as it's the third edition
That's
of your
right.
book. Yes.
Yes, third
Yeah.
edition. The second one was already 10 years ago, so I thought I'd better get on with it. Otherwise it will be out of date.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So that keeping it current and so there's so much to talk about in the book, and particularly there's two new chapters on the climate, the urgent need for decolonisation
That's
in our
right.
work as well. So we want to make sure we've got time to talk about those two really important topics.
Mm.
But maybe as we're settling in, Els, could you say a little bit about yourself, kind of your work around supervision in the field, and kind of what drives you to write the book and keep updating it? Would that be all right?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I really enjoy supervision. I first started supervision in the sort of mid 90s. And after doing a course in supervision. And at the time, it was also really coming into nursing. I'm not sure that it is now, but so I was involved with it in the nursing profession as well as within counseling at that time, and then later therapy. And I realized that there were not that many courses available. So my colleague Leslie Spencer and myself then developed a supervision course, and we taught that. Uh, at least I taught it for 18 years until 2018. Leslie left two years earlier because we thought we wouldn't be good if we both left at the same time, but we thought we'd better leave to give somebody else a chance to teach it. So yeah, so I've been doing a lot of teaching supervision, and because I was doing so, we were developing the course, and I was doing so much teaching. I basically developed a model, and I thought, and basically wrote it alongside my teaching preparations, and yeah, and then it got published in 2003. That was the first edition, and then 10 years later, the second edition, uh, and yeah, another third, because people still read it. It seems.
It's a
So,
core text in the supervision training field and an important model as well. So
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yes, and I developed that model because I basically realized that's how I work myself. I thought, what do I do actually? And I thought, well, yeah, that's I have that three-step model in my mind
Mhm.
when I supervise. So I thought I'll flesh that out and talk about it and write about it and teach it.
Yes, yeah. Well, for colleagues who are maybe meeting you for the first time, who are kind of coming into supervision, could you, would this be a good time to say something about the model to describe it to colleagues? And
Absolutely,
yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Well, I first of all, I think supervision is really important because working with clients in counseling and therapy, but also other professions, it's not easy, and people need support for it. We will need to be able to go to someone and say, "I had a really difficult session yesterday, and I just need to talk about it." But we can't because it's all confidential. So in supervision, it's supportive. It's all about reflection. We learn from it, and um, it's also a check that we're actually working properly, working ethically, working to the best of our ability. So the model, I see it as very relational, a relationship between myself and the supervisee on an equal level, even as far as trainees are concerned, trainee practitioners, because they're adults. I'm not superior to them. It has to be as much as possible, try to have it on an even level. Um, And then the model is, I call it made easy because it's just 3 steps. I'm not going to say I'm a simple person. I'm not, but I like things to I like things to be simple. I like to keep it simple, not to make it more complicated than it's necessary. Let's put it like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's 3 steps. The first step is really, what does the supervisee want? So it's really important, I think, or very helpful for supervisors to think before they go to supervision, okay, what do I want to talk about, or who do I want to talk about, and what do I want to get out of it? So I asked the supervisee, okay, what would you like to talk about today? And what's the topic? Because sometimes it's the topic. They might say, I have a problem with working with people with trauma, or with people with grief, or whatever. So to know what we're going to talk about, or who we're going to talk about, and I asked them to give me the gist, just a little bit of context, so that we know what we're going to reflect on. So that's step one. And then I'll ask, um, what you want to walk away with. What would make you say, I've had a really good session. I had what I needed. What will that be? And even if people don't really know, it still makes them think, yeah. So that's step one. And that doesn't have to be very long. In fact, that usually isn't.
Mm.
And then step two is the biggest section. That's the actual reflection. So we really reflect on what is happening. If it's a relationship between the supervisee and the client, we look at that. We look at all the feelings, etc. It really depends, because so many different ways of reflection exist, and it all depends what the issue is. Maybe something happened in the last session and they don't know what. So we may actually recreate it. Okay, you be the client, I'll be you, and then I feedback what that felt like, etc. And then once we've come to a certain limit, or the time. Oh, that's the other thing, of course, I do. How much time you want to spend on this particular client? If it's the whole session, that's fine. You may know. If it's 2 or 3 clients, how do you want to divide the time?
Mm.
That's all part of it. And then at some point, it looks like we've come to a certain space in the reflection, and say, okay, well, let's see where we are now. What what have you gained? Did you get what you needed? What you're going to be doing differently as a result, etc. And included also is writing your notes. That's quite important, I think, to do afterwards. I see that as the third step as well, to really be clear what it was about, say, the client you were not clear on, how you were reflecting on it, and what insight, either in the client or even in yourself, you have come to. Now, some supervision models, because of course there are quite a few models. Some supervision models just focus on the process, right? So this one is a structure and process model. So the 1, 2, 3 steps is a sort of overarching structure. But that second step in the middle can incorporate other process models. So like the model that was initially developed by Hawkins and Shohei, the 7 eyes, 7-eyed model, 7 eyes through which you can look at a supervision session, etc. And so there are many models. And I have to now also mention that, of course, I've incorporated Myra Khan's uh, 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 working within diversity model, within the 3 step. So right at the beginning, meeting a new supervisee for the first time, to who is possibly from a different background, but to do it anyway, I think is good. And say, well, do you mind if we find out a little bit about each other? Now, I'm a white, um, cisgendered, originally Dutch woman. Uh, and how about you? And then we can talk about, as Myra suggests, what difference it might be and how that might be for us, etc. And to navigate that and to be honest with each other if something doesn't feel right. And I think that's very important and a really important shift, actually. So to work within diversity rather than with, as is often said, because working with diversity to me means I'm all right, I'm the norm, but you're diverse, and I'm going to work with you. You know, they're the same. They just happen to be looking differently. But ultimately we're all human beings.
Yeah. It's been such an important piece of work that Myra's brought to the field to then, even when we maybe have not noticed that we're just making that assumption that we're the norm, how
I
when
know.
we miss that we're also positioned somewhere and that there's, yeah, like us knowing that and being able to talk about that with the people that we accompany, with our supervisees, so important. Yeah.
And to be comfortable with it and make it just this is what you do. Have it there rather than not talking about it and feeling uncomfortable and, oh, I wonder how they see me. Well, just
Yeah.
so you set the ground rules. Just tell me whenever you feel unhappy or I've said something a bit clumsy,
Mm.
just tell me, and we talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they do. Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
Like as a supervisor, getting that into the conversation right at the beginning of the relationship, really important. So that supervisees know that they can come back to us and say, "Oh, John, when you responded like that, it just wasn't right for me, or it was upsetting. It was really upsetting for me." And
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And the
yeah,
same, and of course, it's role modeling as well, so that they can then role model that with the clients they
yeah,
see.
yes, yeah. And that would be important with supervisees that are maybe sharing a lot culturally. Maybe, I mean, I'm a white Scottish man, heterosexual. Like I might be working with a supervisee that seems to share a lot of those things too. But being able to have the conversation
Yeah.
in those relationships too is important modeling, and because there are also going to be well, we're going to be positioned differently somehow because we're unique individuals. And
Yes, absolutely. And just because we're both, say, white,
mm,
there are differences. Yeah, I didn't say middle class. Yeah, how is that for you? Yeah, they might say, well, I'm
yes,
working class. Well, how are we going to navigate that?
yes,
All that sort of thing. Yeah,
yeah,
to just have it all up in the open.
yeah,
But
yeah,
and it also means that we can ask the sort of questions that we're not quite sure of, maybe. That
mm,
when somebody comes from a really different background, but how is that for you? This is not something I'm familiar with. How is that? Not to take
mm,
anything for granted.
yes, yeah. We can make, well, I mean, it's part of the how we are as humans. The mind can fill in the blanks so that we can be more, we can do things quickly. It's the brain set
Yeah,
up like that. Often unhelpful in the kind of work that we're doing to just allow ourselves to do that. That's slowing it down, as you're saying, and
yeah.
being mindful of each other. Yeah,
And really to get to know each other and build a relationship with each other so that the other person feels comfortable and doesn't dread going to supervision as can happen, you know,
yeah,
and
yeah,
valuing the supervisee's point of view because um they are the ones working with the clients.
mm,
Because sometimes supervisors think that, I know that with that kind of client, this is what you do, but it's like not like that. So I really see that that second stage, that second step, as helping the help or facilitating rather, facilitating the supervisee to really reflect and look at something from all different angles and come to their own conclusion. And only if they get to the limits of what they know or can do at that stage, if they're still learning, for example, then I would come and offer some information or some suggestions. I wonder whether you could say that's such and such. How would that be? You know, yeah,
Yeah. Yes. Well, and I could see that all the way through the book. You're really encouraging us to be in a deeply relational process,
yeah,
even if we're using models that are maybe not focused on the relationship. They're maybe modality focused, as you're saying, process focused. But the building of that relationship so, so important. And yeah,
absolutely. Just because say you're very psychodynamic doesn't mean you can't build a relationship. Anyway,
yeah,
the most up to date, if you like, new developments within psychoanalysis are also very relational.
yeah,
They realize that having a neutral face is not terribly helpful.
yeah,
So, you're a real person. So,
yeah.
so things are moving all the time.
It's it's so good to see that across the modalities that we're more and more paying attention to the relationship in that. And in your model, you're also describing in the book the role of structure as well, and how that's important for creating relationship and creating a feeling of safety that people can
Absolutely.
experience some
I think the
structure.
very structure of the
Yeah,
model creates
yeah,
that safety.
mm,
You know how long the session is going to be, and if it looks like you might be overrunning, still within your supervision space, but you said, let's spend half an hour on this, and the half hour is coming to a close, you'll say, well, but we're nearly out of time on this particular issue. What do you want to do? Then they might say, I think I've got enough actually. Or they might say, uh, no, this is really important. Let's continue. You know,
mm,
yeah.
yeah,
But so they have the choice. Yeah,
yeah, yes. And that we're supporting that choice as supervisors as well, because sometimes we can attribute more autonomy to a colleague um, than is happening in the moment. If they've touched some shame in themselves or they've got anxious about something, just having us holding that structure and being available. So, um, yeah, I mean, we're thinking about that a lot more now, aren't we? We might go into a freeze or a fawn kind of reaction and having those things that you're describing.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Mm,
Yes, I think it's really important as a supervisor to be able to hold a session, no matter what happens and what you hear, because sometimes you might hear really, really terrible things, but to hold that, because the person has come to you. Yeah.
yeah. That
But
we've got hold of the structure and
yeah,
yeah,
so
yeah,
the supervisor should never be afraid to bring something because they think we might not like it or we might
yeah,
tell them off or whatever, It should be a place where you look forward to coming and feel supported and go away feeling that you had that you gained
mm,
what you needed. Yeah, I
mm,
think that's just
yeah,
really important because if it's not like that, if people don't get what they need, what's the point? Then you go through the motions, and then it will have an effect on their work as well if they have nowhere or they feel they can't talk freely, whatever that is, then they have
mm,
no support.
yeah,
Hmm. And
yes.
that will
And
affect the client work, of course.
well, it's harder to recreate that safety for the clients if we're not experiencing it ourselves. And
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, well, just noticing a comment in the chat about when when our supervisees are right at the beginning of their work, they're in training, they're students, and they want to bring everyone into the session. That can be difficult as well, like making space for all the clients and whether you've got any thoughts around that, Els, how to manage and
Well, of course, I think when people first start, they should only start with one client, and then when they've got a bit of experience, the second client. Because I think sometimes agencies can be so short-staffed or so pressed that they think, "Oh, great, a new person," and they give them too much work. But that is counterproductive. You only give someone what they can cope with until they feel that they can take on a second person. I feel quite strongly about that. Yeah. Um,
then there's
yeah,
plenty of
and
space.
help them to really focus. So if they want to bring everyone and there doesn't seem to be enough time, well, and say they've got three people and they want to talk about all three for a start, I would say, well, we definitely need hour and a half sessions or even 2 hours if that's what you need, uh, and have that in the contract, of course. I'm sorry, lost my bearings. What am I? What did you ask me?
Well, I think it's so helpful what you're saying that trying to talk about three clients in half an
Oh
hour or
yes.
something, it's
Oh,
just not
oh
going to
yes,
work,
that
is
now
it?
I've got it back.
To be,
Yeah. And to help them focus because when people come, particularly at the beginning, they want to tell you absolutely everything about the client, more or less tell you the whole session. Well, you can't. If you have an hour session with the client, you can't in an hour and a half recreate that completely, and it's also not helpful. So to really help them to think, now what is important? Tell me, I'll give you three sentences. In which three sentences can you really encapsulate whatever your client? Yeah. So really learn that. And that's why I feel it's so important that people prepare for supervision, that they keep regular notes and definitely keep notes, but maybe also notes of what to take to supervision
yeah,
so that they have that when it's time to go to supervision. Oh yes, I had that. I wanted to talk about that, and then really be clear on, okay, you're going to bring a supervision, but why? What is it about that, and what you want from that? And I find as people get more experienced, they do that. They come and say, okay, well, right. Today I'd like to talk about three clients, and that they actually do that. And the first client I want to talk about whatever. And I say, okay, how do you want to divide the time? So it comes with experience, I think.
yeah,
So that they really learn to get to know themselves and their own needs.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that preparation makes so much sense, and I really like that way of thinking about it. If you've got or you have got three sentences to describe the client, and
For
that might be,
example, I
for
might want to
example,
hear more.
yes, of course, but
Yeah.
like that might also, it's a great exercise to do in the preparation for supervision as well, to then think, right, because we do have limited time and there's lots to talk about. So yeah, that really practical things to do there, Els. Thank you.
How
Yeah,
to make the most of the time. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, and I'm thinking about our time as well. We're about halfway through our
Okay.
conversation already. And I'm thinking about those two new chapters in the book that are really, really essential reading. And there's things that we wanted to talk about here as well. Might it be a good time to move to that? Or there might be a
Sure. Yeah.
couple of
Yeah.
things yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fine. Yeah.
Well, we've already kind of begun on the themes of decolonisation in terms of what you were describing around Myra's model that you've
Mm.
also adopted into your model as well. And these are themes that weren't being talked about in psychotherapy and supervision and counselling 20 years ago. These are, although they were there, they've been there the whole time. Um, it's something that we seem to have been able to ignore quite profoundly. And thanks to colleagues like Myra and other colleagues who are doing Myra Can and other colleagues doing that work, is really coming to the surface and so important. Yeah. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And Yeah, so it's part of the whole context of people's lives, isn't it? Because a lot of people we see now, for example, if you if you work with a client who is an immigrant, there'll be a whole history there, etc. That needs to be talked about. Yeah. So and there is a change, I think, or there is a change happening within the therapy world, that's important. And of course, yeah, uh, decolonization, I think, is highly, very, very necessary. It's been talked about for quite a while, I guess, and with EDI, etc. But not a great deal has really happened. And I realized that in a lot of trainings, the vast majority is white, and and you get very, very few people who are not. And when I was training counselors, it was unusual to have a person who wasn't white. It happened, clearly it happened, but it was unusual. And then also in my own experience, when I was training, it was unusual. And people didn't always, the people from another culture did often not have a good time. And basically, I started to look into decolonization, etc. And I realized that it is actually a huge issue. I was awakened, if you like, because I was already thinking about it and reading a bit. But certainly when the George Floyd thing happened, that was so huge. And to actually see that this policeman was happy to be videoed, basically murdering someone very casually. That was so incredibly shocking. And of course, it reverberated throughout the world. But it really made me realize I should have known, but are things really that bad? And they are. And I just started to look into um, what was happening within therapy and within supervision. And not enough, basically. And I realized that or at least all the models and theories we're being taught about counseling and therapy are white. As for Lucy Taylor, who's a writer and therapist, she calls them dead white men. We learn all about all these dead white men. What's that got to do with us? And I thought, gosh, she's right. Who do we think we are? Um, yeah, who do we think we are that we know everything? So I realized that actually what we need to do uh, as a profession, and I'm talking to white people about white people now, we need to decolonize ourselves. We need to decolonize ourselves. We need to inter what do you call it? Interrogate. We need to interrogate our whiteness. What does it involve? And actually, once we really start to do that, it's astonishing, really, because we feel entitled, we're white, and with that comes, on the whole, a superiority. Britain, but also the Netherlands, where I come from, and many other European countries, basically thought that they were superior because they were white. And they just went to all these other countries all over the world and say, okay, well, nobody of any importance is living here. I'm going to have this. And basically killed a lot of people. And the ones that survived tried to turn them into ourselves, you know, uh, took their land away, took their language away, often took their children away. And that's real stuff that happens. And realizing that, I thought, gosh, and we've all been grown up with that. Uh, and that's a lot to take on board. Um, shall I carry on or?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean,
I,
Yes,
I don't
and
know how helpful this is, but it's a
well, the
lot.
bit I was thinking about as you're talking and as I was reading the chapter earlier, like you're really encouraging us to do a lot of personal investigation,
Yes, I think that's important.
internal, and also for the history. And so that's a lot of activity happening outside of the supervision session. And I, I mean, it's kind of an obvious question, but could you say a bit about why you think that's so important that we're doing that work outside of supervision?
Well, I think I think the supervisors themselves need to do it first and foremost,
Yes.
because people will go. That's who they go to. So we, as supervisors, we really need to do this work to find out what it's really like for people who are not white and what they experience and etc. And what we need to do ourselves. We really need to understand what where it all came from, I think. So yeah, so I what I did in the book is, because I did a lot of work. I was in various groups and decolonizing groups, and I was in a dream group where but somehow we ended up dreaming about this, and that was very helpful. And I read loads of books and went to lots of things online as well, and talked with people. And and so as a result of all that, I realized that the three-step model could be used to decolonize ourselves, if you like. So to and supervisors can start with that and then suggest it to their supervisees as well. But to form a group, say, and really do all the things you do with a group. We're going to work together where have a contract, and to see where people are regarding their race awareness. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I imagine this was a sort of a group a hypothetical group, if you like, based on my own experience of various other groups. Um, let's say we knew absolutely nothing, say, and we thought, well, how did all this come about? How come we are somehow this has all happened, and why are global majority people not treated well, and why is it not involved in the therapy training, etc. And why do trainees often have a bad time? Also, when did this start? And then it's actually quite shocking when you really look into it, how it was just basically create because people wanted to make money. Um, it's a product of capitalism, really. People discovered the Americas, and well, it started with the Portuguese who found this island, and they thought, oh, that's great. Let's cut all the trees down and build and grow sugar because it's warm enough there. Oh dear, we seem to have no one to go work there. So they basically took slaves, and the slaves worked there, etc. So then lots of other people followed suit and did that in the States, and it seemed to be okay to do that because um, we thought we were superior. Yeah. Um, But during the so-called Enlightenment, I say, because there's nothing enlightened about it, but in the sort of 17th century, if you like, thought that white people were superior because we had bigger brains and we were basically more intelligent, and therefore we could do these things.
Yeah.
We could enslave other people because they were not quite like us. In fact, quite often they didn't even regard non-white people as human.
Like
Doesn't.
that history and the science that started to be concocted, I guess, through
Absolutely,
this
it was
time.
totally
Yeah.
concocted. But what
Yeah.
was even more shocking, that there was a pope in the 15th century who actually had a papal bull in which he gave the European countries the right to go to the Americas, and the same went for all the other countries, and
Yeah.
basically enslave people, etc., and colonize them. He
Yeah.
actually gave them his permission. Yeah.
And
which is
I'm noticing the
stunning.
time as well, and just thinking because there's so much history to talk about here.
Yeah, so
There's
that's the
just
history, and
huge.
that's yeah, that I think that's the
Yeah.
foundation, and that's important to know.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
And like, could you say something else about like how you feel that's kind of created a shift in you, how it's helped you as a supervisor to really know that history and to know where this has come from and what the culture and the society it's created, like what difference does it
I think
create in you?
it's made a huge difference.
Mm,
Absolutely, it's made me very humble to realize how ignorant I was and how yeah, absolutely. But I'm also fascinated by people's culture because they're so rich, and they're so different. Uh, yeah, and to really value that.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And to realize also that when people come with problems, whatever is happening, not to necessarily see it through my white European lens, the white therapy lens, if you like. But
Yeah.
how is this seen in your culture? What would help you if you were in your own country? What would people do? What would be helpful? What are the what are the things that people do? And quite often it's much more community based. We're so individual here, and therapy is a very individual thing. You go and see your therapist, and it's completely there's nobody else.
Yeah.
But other cultures are very often very different, and they value community, and they want to work on things with other people. And I find it very interesting because we're
Yeah.
getting more and more individual. And supervision, that's why supervision groups are great because you're already opening it up and they can be incredibly rich.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So it made a huge
Well,
effect. Yeah, and I
yeah.
realized how much talent amongst global majority people is not used to the best. There's so much talent that's not recognized. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Els, for talking about like the impact of the work
Mm,
that you've done, and then I think that really helps motivate us as a community of practitioners to say, yeah, we all need to be in this on this journey. And you say that in the book, this is not a destination to arrive at, but a
it's
continual piece of
it's
work
still
for
ongoing
us.
for me. Yeah, it's still
Yeah,
ongoing. I don't think it will ever
yeah,
finish.
yes. Well, and I want to make sure we've got time for the other new chapter as well, which is, of course, very, 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 very linked to decolonisation
Yeah, same.
around climate change. Like there's so much overlap in that too, because of the kind of Northern European, that white capitalist impact on the world too. And yeah, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
you're kind of in the book also talking about, well, that's the lens that we're all looking at the world through and shifting that around climate as well. Els, is that right? And yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, what do you mean? Uh,
Well, like
just make sure I understand you. Yeah.
I'm just asking a question off the cuff there, and I'm wondering what I mean. But like that attitude that was emerging through the Enlightenment, that's kind of
Oh,
created
yeah.
slavery, it's created that colonization,
Yeah. Yeah.
has
Yeah.
also created the way that we use the resources on the planet, that's created so
Absolutely.
much damage. And yeah,
Yeah. Because we see ourselves as above nature rather than part of nature. So, like we thought we could use global majority, just use them as we want because, they're not intelligent or not as we told ourselves. But nature is there to be used by us. We're not part of nature. We can use it, and that's actually somewhere in Christian scripture as well, but not meant like that clearly. And then it's taken to mean I'm not quite sure how they made from well, you're in charge of the of the, it's a weird thing to say to a people, you're in charge of the world, etc. But it's probably to do with translation as well. But I don't know how that then became you can plunder and ruin it and destroy it. That's not really the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so our relationship with nature is it's tragic.
Mm.
You know, we all live in cities. Some of us are living, don't even have a little bit of green space, and we're completely separate from it, but we need it. And I think we're beginning to realize how harmful it is for people not to be in nature, and how different that you feel if you go and walk in the woods. There's no such a thing as forest bathing. Well, in the past that was just normal. Of course, you walked in the forest every day, you know.
Yeah.
Um, yes, and because that's it. And then of course there's capitalism, which is extractive. It would it wants more and more. It's something that always wants to grow. You know how they always talk about it wants to keep growing and growing. So it needs to keep plundering the earth, you know, all the time. Cut down more forests, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dig more coal, etc. Um,
And then clients are coming into therapy, and of course,
yeah,
then that's going to show up in supervision with
yes,
climate anxiety. People are getting very, very depressed,
yes, they are.
incredibly anxious,
Yeah,
and yeah,
and that's why it's so important, I think, for supervisors to actually acknowledge that, first of all, in ourselves, because we're all in the same boat. And it is very worrying. I mean, the COP thing is happening now, and apparently I was reading in the paper this morning that the agreements they have now would still lead to a 2.6 percent of warming. Oh, great! That's not going to work very well, is it?
yeah,
So yes, so we need to work it through ourselves to actually acknowledge and accept what's happening. And that's a big thing because it's huge if you think what's really happening. It's absolutely huge. And to work through that really, and to and because it's not something we can take better. And it's something that we can't say, okay, that happened, we'll process it and then we'll move on. We can't because this is ongoing. Uh,
yeah,
so that we're able to sit with a client who's really, really distressed and anxious, and we can hold that at the same time, not trying to make it better, but acknowledge that yes, this is awful, and etc. And this is actually helpful because people often say, I haven't been able to talk about this before. When I talk about it to my friends, they just change the subject and talk about the next holiday in Tenerife they're having, or something. Or they'll say, well, you worry too much. I think you need therapy. This is not it's not that bad, or they just deny it. And in it, there's a need to understand why people react the way they do.
yeah,
More and more people are now aware that it really is happening, despite what Donald Trump and other people say. It is really happening. I mean, it's 15 degrees here today. It's November. That really isn't normal.
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. That we're seeing those changes all over the
yeah,
world, uh, uh, and counselling has more recently made a real move towards solution focused kind of work, which can be very, very appropriate for clients. But of course, when there isn't an immediate solution, which there isn't for the climate,
there
and
isn't.
definitely not one we can make as individuals, it's a different capacity we need as therapists and supervisors.
Absolutely. Yeah, to hold it and to talk about it. But what is helpful is to be able to talk with other people, and that's why, as in supervision as well, in the group, you could have regular a listening circle, say, where you all just talk about your feelings, etc., and your client's feelings, and while the others listen and don't try and make it better because you can't.
Yeah,
But of course we can do is help the supervisee help the client to express all the feelings they have, which in itself is helpful because, just being able to talk about stuff helps. And then quite often people come to us a place where they think, well, I can't change the world, of course not, but I can do something. I can grow more, whatever it is, in my garden, or I can go and volunteer on a site on allotments, or whatever. Or I can hold listening circles myself. I think of doing the training and that sort of thing. And it doesn't really matter, as we were saying earlier, how small a thing it is we do. It will have an effect somewhere, so that we. But yes, this is an extraordinary time, that we have never been in before. And lots of
Yeah.
people are very anxious, not just about the climate, but about everything.
Yeah.
And the therapists are listening to this, and then the therapists will want, and they hold the clients, and then the supervisor holds the therapist, and of course as therapists we need to be held as well. We need our own circle as well to hold us, which is
We do
very
indeed.
helpful.
Yes. Well, and so that we feel able to meet our own distress about what's happening and
And
that
acknowledge it.
and
Yeah, we need
acknowledge
to
it.
be
Yeah.
honest about it and not pretend
Yes.
that we don't feel the same. So yeah, I
Yes.
feel I feel that too.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And how helpful then for our supervisees and then when we're working with clients that it's humans together who can hold that anxiety and well maybe even the depth of depression that can come from that too.
And
Yeah.
in a way it's part of the grieving process. We're grieving for the world, if you like. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
depression is
Yeah.
part of that.
Yeah.
Anger is
Absolutely.
part of that.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, and we've got a question around this in the chat.
Okay,
Um,
I
so
can't see the
thank you
chat now.
for Elaine. Thank you for typing away. Is that all right if we come to the
Yeah, no,
question,
great. Yeah,
Els? Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So, such a good question. Do you see the supervisor role as educating the supervisee on these issues if spotted? Thinking about decolonisation, thinking about climate. Yeah. How much of that role would you think about being
Uh,
as education?
yeah, maybe a little, but I would signpost them to where they can go, or I would signpost them to books they can read, organizations they can who run workshops, etc. They can go to. But yes, maybe a little, certainly about if they haven't seen my Rakan's model to introduce them to that, etc. It all depends, doesn't it? But certainly, if they have, say, a client that they felt out of their depth with, of we could do a role play between us, etc. So that
Mhm.
sort of thing can be
Mhm.
done.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But
Well,
not
I
to
so
take, not to do all the decolonization. That would be a whole different ballgame, wouldn't it?
right. That could be like a whole course could be happening in
Well,
the
yes,
supervision, but
exactly. But I
yeah.
might suggest there's a course I might they might like to do if they want to. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Well, and I really appreciated in the book, especially in those two chapters, you are doing some of that education to kind of open up some of those doors
Yeah.
for us, and then like a really resourced reading list where you're encouraging us to think about different colleagues that we can read and access to extend that. So you're doing some of that work with us in terms of your own book and those recommendations, Els, which is
Yeah, and
wonderful.
and
Yeah.
new helpful books are being published all the time. There's actually it really now seems to be the time that people realize there's an issue, and what we need to do. And
Yeah.
okay, I'm talking about decolonizing supervision, but therapy needs to be decolonized. And just the last few days, last few weeks, two books have come out about this. So that's brilliant.
Yes. Do you remember names and authors, or because it'd be
Yeah,
lovely to get some really current recommendations
there's
too?
this one.
Of course,
That's
yes,
called Decolonized Minds, a
yes,
framework for decolonizing psychotherapy. I'm not quite sure how you pronounce his name, but I'm saying Tala Alali. And then, of course, there's this one,
yes.
A New Introduction to Counseling and Psychotherapy, Embedding Context, Diversity, and Equity into Practice. And this is an absolute, could be used as an absolute basis
Mm.
for starting a whole course. Yeah, because it's really, he says it needs to be embedded uh, context, diversity, and equity right at the beginning. And I think that's really, really good. And I've got a little
And that's
list
Mahmoud
with,
Ahmed, isn't it?
yeah,
Yes,
Mahmoud Ahmed.
yes,
Yeah,
yes. Oh,
yeah,
sorry to
really.
interrupt, Els. Yeah,
Yeah, no, that book, yeah. But I've typed out a little list I can send you, John,
yeah,
that maybe you can send to people that has those books and others on them. But I find it very exciting. Things are
mm,
really happening, and there's some really
yeah,
good ideas in both those books. Yeah.
yeah. Wonderful books, and thank you for that reading list as well that you'll share with us. Els, we'll definitely email out everybody who's registered to be here live, and if you're watching the recording in the library in the future, close to the recording, we'll have that list as well.
Oh, I see. That'd be great. Yeah. There's
Yeah,
loads more books. I just
yeah,
selected a few that particularly focus on change, on decolonizing therapy. Yeah.
and that, like, I love how you're saying like there's an excitement too, there's an energy, there's a response to what's going on too that we can then get behind. We can engage with the reading, engage with the courses and the events that people are putting on as well, to really kind of lend our energy and our momentum too. Yeah,
Absolutely. It is exciting actually because there is so much knowledge and wisdom in other ways of looking at
yeah,
therapy and helping people.
yeah,
It is very exciting. Yeah,
yes, yeah,
yeah. And also to use the arts in it as well, not to be afraid of using uh painting or whatever, different things into the work
yeah.
because
Well,
it can be very rich. Not everything can be said.
absolutely, yes.
Mm.
And there's a whole section in your book that we haven't got anywhere near in our conversation
Oh
around
yeah.
the
Yeah.
creative approaches and
That's right. I've
supervision.
got
So,
loads of creative approaches, yes, but they are very helpful, I find.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here we are. We've come up to our time in terms of our today and our conversation. Thank you, Els, for coming along and having the conversation about the new edition of the book, and particularly those two new chapters and how important the whole book is and being able to access the model, and particularly what we're engaged with
Hmm.
as a society and as a field. Thank you, Els.
Well, thank you, John, for giving me the opportunity, and thank you for everyone to come today. I really appreciate that.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you, everyone, being present with us. I think the way that we're present with each other makes a real difference as well, doesn't it? So thank you, everyone. Thank you to the colleagues who are watching us in the future as well. It's been lovely to have your presence too, and we'll make sure you have access to the resources. Jeff, thank you for taking such good care of us as well. Can see the link that Jeff has just popped into the chat. So it's just very easy to click on that URL. It'll take you over to PCCS Books and you can get your copy of the third edition.
With a
So,
discount, I believe.
oh, that's right. Don't miss the discount. Yes, absolutely. Um, Fantastic. And if anybody's got any questions around any of that, drop us an email on events, which you can do by replying to any of the emails that we send you. And we send out loads of emails. Just reply, say, I need some help with that discount and the book code, and we'll look after you. Yeah. Well, I think that's a time to come to a close. Hoping we'll have you back again soon. Els, I know that you're thinking about maybe running some workshops with us and expanding some of
Mm.
those themes. So looking forward to progressing that too.